Daily Solutions.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, hi. This is Ashkahn over here.
And Graham over here.
You guys can't see that,
But we're standing on different sides of the room.
yeah.
And today's question for us, is did you begin with only one tank? Did you pick a location for multiple tanks? It seems as though the construction/moving process would make you lean towards a larger location if that's what you're going for. I see multiple tanks is what they mean by if that's what you're going for. Not like if you're going for a larger location, then you should definitely get one.
Yeah,
Because that's pretty
that's
self-evident.
pretty obvious. It's hard not to do that.
So no.
Did we start with one tank?
No, we started with 4 tanks.
Yeah, but we do advise people to start with one tank
Well,
in like their house. Not like build your center out for one tank.
I see, yeah. Because we kind of advise the opposite in terms of actually building a designated float center. If someone says, like, should I have a 1-tank center or a 4-tank center? We usually say 4 tanks.
Maybe they like heard that we say stuff like start out with a single float tank, you know?
In your house, just to bring some people in, learn the ropes, and then when you move to your bigger float center,
an actual, like when you're leaving your house,
then you can use that tank in that center and add it to your 3 other units or whatever
or you could sell it, you know.
And get out of the industry altogether, yes. Just leave.
Move out of your house.
Once you realize how much salt cleaning there is,
yeah.
I mean, that is one of the reasons I say people should get a float tank in their house when I'm pitching it. It's like you may decide you hate this. So, no, we didn't start with 1 tank, but the idea of launching a float center with fewer tanks and later expanding in that same location to more tanks is also something that we advise people to do.
Yeah, basically, it's expensive to start up a float center.
Yeah.
And like rather than cutting corners on all of your construction, like we usually recommend people save money by maybe not launching with the full amount of tanks they want and saving money on, first of all, the purchasing of those extra float tanks. And there's some of the room construction that like you don't really need to do until the point that you actually want to put float tanks in there. And there's some that you want to do in your normal round of construction too.
Yep, and so basically what happens here is that as much construction as you can get done all at the same time, even if you're not launching with all your float tank rooms. Let's just say that you're starting with 2 tanks, you have room for 5 rooms. Like in a totally ideal world, you'd actually build out the entirety of those 5 rooms and just not put the float tanks in, essentially. And that's because every time you have a contractor come out, there's a certain amount of money just to get them on the job site, to get the contract signed, to start construction, and to do whatever work is going to be done. So as much as you have done at one time, it's going to make each room that much cheaper for every room that's added on, right? So in that sense, a single room is the most expensive thing to build. So if you build out a float tank room in your hypothetical 5-tank center and that's all you do, the next time you're going to have to call in all the soundproofers, you're going to have to call in the plumbers, you're going to have to call in the waterproofers, and they're going to have to build a second room. And then the third time, repeat that process over and over. And every time you're calling them out, you're kind of paying a premium to get them out there to begin with. So the more work you can get done all at once for any of your construction is, of course, better.
Right. It goes with float tanks, too. You probably save on some shipping cost and if someone's coming out to install them and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Just getting all your float tanks at once is definitely the ideal.
But it does scale back. So there's certain things like, obviously your float tanks would be kind of the first thing to go if you were trying to consider not building a room out fully. You don't want to just buy float tanks and then put them in storage. That would be really silly. And then from there, it'd probably be some sort of like waterproofing, because all that is kind of like a layer that goes on top of stuff. So if you build a room out and then later you bring someone in to like actually put in the kind of floors you're looking for, or maybe you put the floors in already, but you want to put up wall paneling or something like that. Like that's kind of a layer that can be just added on top of the existing construction you've done.
Although we do see some centers, it's really funny going into a place. And just to back up slightly, a lot of people use these extra rooms for storage or for practitioner rooms. so they can rent it out in the meantime. And it's really funny to go into a massage room that has fully waterproof floors and drains and an actual shower fixture. And it's really obvious it's going to be a float tank room as soon as they can afford the tank to actually put in there. But in the meantime, there's a massage table and some nice ambient lighting and things like that. So that is a funny experience.
And then soundproofing is way harder to not do at first, because ideally, it's not like soundproofing is just something you add on top of non-soundproof material. Like, you're usually either buying normal, like, building material or soundproof building material when it comes to things like sheetrock or doors or stuff like that. So you could save money. I mean, you could build, like, double stud walls and then put normal sheetrock on top of them and then tear that sheetrock out and replace it with soundproof sheetrock. But, like, that starts to get more and more difficult. And you're starting to spend more money on temporary things when you get into that point.
Although extra layers can also be a place to cut corners.
Yeah,
so if you do just put like a single layer of kind of soundproof drywall or of your soundproofing wall assembly, and then later, before you're adding on all the waterproofing, you know that you're going to go on and add a whole second layer of walling, that's doable. You're kind of only wasting the money for mudding and painting and stuff like that. Yeah.
And then pretty much plumbing is where, like, I would really draw the line. Like, you really don't want to, like, have to, in the middle of wanting to add more rooms, bring out someone to, like, cut trenches in your concrete and, like, lay more plumbing line. Like, it just gets crazy from that point.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Get rough in the plumbing.
And
at
electrical,
the very
too.
least. So if you're planning to have 5 tanks, you're building out 2 of your rooms totally immediately, still plumb out the other 3 rooms. Like, rough it in, be ready to, you won't have to cut in the concrete when you do install your next float tanks. All you have to do is get the plumbers back in there, they can install the fixtures, and you're pretty much good to go on the plumbing side.
Yeah, so the stuff that's, like, really going into the infrastructure of your building, plumbing, electrical, that sort of stuff. But
even
HVAC,
planning for HVAC is because the entire system will be load balanced in an HVAC system as well. So knowing where your rooms are going and what you're planning is actually going to be a really important part of getting that accurate.
So yeah, that'd be the stuff it'd just be really expensive and a huge headache to have to add that in after the fact.
And with electrical, we've done that before too. Had to go back in and cut indoor ceilings and run electrical lines all the way across the course of our entire center in order to tie back into the electrical box to go into new rooms and add new circuits. And that's so much more expensive than doing the electrical work at the beginning when your space is entire gutted and you can just get inside the walls and inside the ceiling. Anytime you have to cut back into your construction to add something in is just so painful and more expensive.
Yeah. I mean, and, like, not having a big enough breaker box or something and kind of a worst, like, you didn't really plan for anything sort of scenario. Like, that stuff can really just start to add up.
Yep. So that's kind of the essentials. And you're right. As a result of how crazy all this construction is and how expensive it is, this is still the preferred way to do it. Like, the idea of getting a center, building out for 2 tanks, and then later moving to a place where you could fit all 5 tanks into means you're kind of losing all of the construction cost going into the stuff, the rooms for those first 2 tanks. You can't really bring the waterproofing or the soundproofing or the plumbing work with you at all into the next location. So that's why you see so many centers building out. If they don't have enough money to start with as many rooms as they want initially, you do see them adding those tanks on to the same existing center they've already built the first rooms in.
And then you just have extra rooms to play with, turn it into a ball pit or like a
extra large ball pit.
Tiny ball pit. There's all sorts of different variations on ball pit that you could use for those different rooms you have.
And we said, Google is a great place to do more research on that.
Maybe we should just have a whole there needs to be an episode about that, I think. I'll have to dive into it.
Yeah, I'll make okay, you
got that written down?
Yeah, our sound guy has it written down. We're on top of that. All right.
I think that sounds like we've answered this question. So,
all right. If you have any more questions for us, go to floattankSolutions.com/podcast
with
a T at the end, and we'll answer your question.
Goodbye.